welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. But this is not just any one episode. This is the 3-year anniversary of the show. Yeah, woo! I'm very excited about this for many reasons. One being that you, the listener, are here with me right now in this digital room, so to speak. This podcast has enabled me to speak to some of my heroes, some of my peers. It's just a really, really fun opportunity, and I can't believe we're at 3 years. That is like 150 some odd episodes. Like I just feel so grateful to you, the listener, for enabling me to do this and showing that you care and you're engaged in this show. I love it. And thank you so much for the support. In case you haven't noticed, it's a little refresh. There's a new logo. That logo is courtesy of Empty Design. You can visit them at emptydesign.net. They do amazing work. My friends Dave and Adam, both of them who I've known for so many years I can't even count, and they have done so many pieces of art for me, and they're killing it. They are reaching their creative apex as far as I'm concerned, where they're just locked in and focused. So if you need anything visual created, contact them. They are your men. And they did the design. I've honed in on this logo. This is it. This is what we're working with. And thank you very much for all the people who contributed past artwork, like Adam Vass and Chris Hansen. Thank you guys. I appreciate that. This is where we're at now. If you did not recognize the music at the top of the show, for those of you regular listeners, change it up a little bit. I contacted another friend of the show, Mr. Ben Sharp, from a project/band called Cloud Kicker, and he wrote and contributed 2 new pieces specifically for this show. Like, that's awesome. I love that people like this show, like me as a person, and want to help this thing grow and get out there. So many, many thanks to Ben for contributing these 2 original pieces. You'll hear one at the very end of the show. And it's great. It kind of sets the tone, because I really want to set the tone when you're joining this podcast. Once you hear that music click on, you're like, all right, let's hang out for an hour. I'm locked in. Thank you to everybody who also donated this past month in April, because that was our donation drive. And basically, for you giving the show money enabled me to do these things. Because, I hate asking for stuff for free, because people are busy, people are professionals, and I want to get them some stuff. It was not just stuff, just money to basically say thank you so much. And so you made the new logo happen. You made the music happen. Thank you so much. I haven't even talked about the guest. This is ridiculous, right? The guest this week is Mr. Nick Steinhart. He is the guitarist from Touche Amore. And not only is he the guitarist, he is the main visual brain behind that and many other compelling pieces of independent art that are out there with bands. Most of you know and are familiar with the band called Deaf Heaven. He did that artwork, which basically caught the world by storm. When I say world, not like major pop culture, but, one may argue that definitely did creep up there. But Nick is a very good friend, and I went to his Silver Lake apartment one morning, and we discussed over an amazing cup of coffee his life and a bunch of other stuff. And I'm excited to bring that to you in a minute. I don't have any business stuff. All I want to do is focus on the fact this is the 3-year anniversary. This is the 156th episode. I've been doing this for 156 weeks. I've been doing this for almost as long as my child has been alive, which is unbelievable. He is now 4 years old, and this show is 3. So I feel like as he grows older, the show grows older, gets better. He gets better as a human being, learns more about the world, understands what's right and what's wrong. It's very analogous. I just didn't think that I would ever really compare my son to a podcast, because clearly one is more important than the other. I digress. So I also want to thank so many people have reached out recently via email to the show, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. And I've just been able to create some new friendships. And I appreciate those of you who are highly engaged in this show, or even just want to say hello. But I've received some really, really thoughtful emails and discourse about the show, the guests, the topics we cover. So it's great. Some more exciting things are in the future. Can't tip my hat quite yet. And I promise one of these build-ups will actually lead to something, because I've done this before. I've built something up and then it kind of goes away. But I promise this one will yield something. So anyways, Nick Steinhart invited me over to his place. We discussed his life, and I've been talking for too long. Here is Nick. Here's our discussion, and I will talk to you after the conversation is over. people where it's like I feel like I've known for a long time, but I have no idea where we first met. Like I can't.
I couldn't pinpoint it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like I
it
mean,
had to have been a show, but what show at what point?
I mean, it was just one of those things where it was like, because obviously I'd known Jeremy for so long, it was like by extension, I felt like I knew each member of Touche like intimately, even though I'd be like, well, I don't actually know them.
Sure.
Is it weird where it's just like you meet these people and you have these connections throughout your life where you're just like, I don't actually know where I met you, like, especially in the context of like the music industry and business and whatever. Like,
I need context clues, like geographic context clues.
Oh, okay.
Because when you're traveling all over the country or whatever, you might see someone you met in Montreal, but like in Florida for some reason.
Right. You're like,
and
I don't know
they're
this.
like, hey, and I have this mental like, and I'm like, give me a clue. And
Right.
like, Montreal. Oh yeah. Like, and then I could tell them everything about when we first shook hands.
Right.
But I need that click.
Right. In order to put, like you said, you need to put it in context.
Yeah. But yeah, in LA and around LA, I would have no hope. Yeah.
It's one big like
you just
pastiche.
exist in my life.
Right. Yeah. You came into it because I mean, for all intent and purposes, like Touche is your first quote unquote like successful band, like a band that you like actively toured with, correct? Or
yeah, I had never toured before.
Okay.
I played a lot locally from the age of 13 on, but never really traveled with the bands.
Okay. And you were born and raised here in LA, right?
I was born in Northridge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And
so suburbs.
Right, the suburbs. And what did your parents do as you were growing up?
My mom was a kindergarten teacher. My dad is a workers' comp attorney.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So he's one of the good people. he's one of the good lawyers.
He works for the insurance company's side.
Okay.
But he is a very straight up, very honest guy.
That's good.
Yeah.
He
loves practicing law. And
that's good.
Doing what he can with it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Usually the connection of people being a lawyer, like, is your father strict from that perspective? Like,
he's my mom was stricter than he was growing up, but
Okay.
she had that I'm a kindergarten teacher, I need to insulate my child from any harm.
I see.
My brother was the athletic one, so he would always be breaking bones and doing bad stuff, and
Right.
I was the kid that painted and took guitar lessons and stayed inside.
Sure. You're an
partially
indoor
because
kid.
of her warnings.
Aha, I see.
Yeah, her caution.
Do you have an older brother? Or?
Yeah, he's 4.5 years older.
Okay. So she's like, your older brother broke all these bones. This is what'll happen to you if you do this.
Yeah, constant warnings, so which scared me. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to do indoor activities because that sounds awful.
Right.
But my dad wasn't strict. He was more just like the sense of logic. Like,
Okay.
everything has to be very, everything has to make a lot of sense.
Very practical.
Very much so.
Okay.
Yeah, but super cool. Not really that strict.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah. So your mother played the quote unquote disciplinarian role, if as it were.
Yeah, I'd say more or less.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it sounds like a very sort of idyllic childhood as far as like, like suburban home, like sort of,
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Your brother, like you said, since he was 4.5 years older than you, like, did you hang out with him at school and stuff like that? Or was it like,
we were always like one step apart. When I started elementary school, he had just left.
right.
But we didn't really get along until I was 13 or so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You guys just fought like brothers fight.
We fought and had completely different interests, so kind of like no use for each other in a weird way.
Right.
But
You were
now-
in separate orbits.
Yeah, but now we're good friends.
Right. Yeah. You've mentioned in like previous discussions and interviews that your dad has helped like shape your musical taste. Like, so what was he putting in your head when you were obviously younger that started to kind of, like, oh wow, like music is an interesting thing?
I think it was just that he was playing it all the time. I remember like he would always be playing like Tom Petty, Bob Dylan, The Byrds, like that was all of his stuff.
Sure.
And he had an acoustic guitar that he used to play, I guess a long time ago. And I remember when he would get home from work, I would like sit on his bed because that was like the time I could use his guitar and just bang around on it.
Yeah.
And then he took me to see Melissa Etheridge
Oh,
I
yeah.
was 5, I think.
Okay.
And then I decided I wanted to play guitar.
At that moment.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I got a guitar when I was 6.
I mean, I'm sure it's difficult to pinpoint like what it actually was that spoke to you, but like what was, was it just like the fact that she could like, perform it well? Like what was
I don't really remember. I just remember that was
That was
me wanting
awesome.
a guitar.
Right.
Yeah.
You're like, I need one of my own.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And did your brother go with you to that, or was it just you?
No,
and
it
your
was just
dad?
me and my dad.
That's awesome.
My brother did start taking guitar lessons, but a few years later.
Okay. Was your dad's intention of taking you to that show to be like, or that concert Because
that's called a concert.
Yeah, it was like the Hollywood Bowl, I presume, or something like that.
I think it was the Greek.
Okay, the Greek. Yeah. Was it one of those things he was really trying to be like, hey, like this, this is what a live musical event is like. This is like my your first concert, so to speak.
I think the first concert was a big deal, but I don't think he really had any intention with it. It was just he would always take me and my brother to do stuff that we were interested in.
Right.
No, pretty much no matter what it was.
Right.
It's very nurturing in that way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And this just occurred to me because being in Northridge, because how old are you?
27.
27. Okay. So that was, around the time of the Northridge earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
Was that, but you were born? Had you exist?
I existed. I was born in 87.
Right. And that was in 93?
94.
94.
Yeah. I was in first grade. We had crazy damage to our house. We had to move out for a little while.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There was cracks through the whole ceiling. The backyard was completely turned up. The pool was in disarray.
Where were you at the time when that was what happened?
I was at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So many people
it just felt like someone was knocking down the house with a wrecking ball. It was really, really crazy.
It's so gnarly when you have those specific moments where it's nationally speaking, you could probably reference the Northridge earthquake and people would be like, oh, I remember that. I remember seeing that on the news.
There's two ways worldwide that I'm able to tell people where I'm from, which is it's a suburb. People shouldn't know it, but it's where E.T. was filmed.
Right.
Which the bike chase near the end of the movie when they're riding their bikes down the dirt hill is where I live maybe a year before they built our neighborhood.
Wow.
And then the Northridge earthquake. So picture those two things and that's my childhood.
And then people would be like, oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
And so then as you started to get your guitar and obviously become more acclimated to that, and like you said, you were just immediately like an indoor kid where you were encouraged to, draw, paint, and be artistic and stuff like that. Was it one of those things that you also by default, because usually the connotation is that person is very emotional and in touch with their emotions and how to express themselves. Did you feel like that either came naturally to you or was that like a learned trait,
Being emotional?
Yeah. as far as or actually I should phrase it better. Sensitive. Cause usually.
Yeah, I was definitely a sensitive kid.
Okay.
I always try and trace things back to the way you were raised. And I think that was a little bit more on my mom's side. Not that my dad isn't sensitive.
Right.
But my mom is definitely that nurturing, caring, sensitive. She was a kindergarten teacher.
It's like what your job is.
Yeah, exactly. So I probably get that sense from her quite a bit.
Got it. And so what were you drawn to immediately as far as like painting and obviously the artistic medium from that perspective? What did you start to dive into?
Really anything. I started just doodling and drawing at home, like Ninja Turtles and cartoons and things that I was into.
Did you ever buy those how to cartoon books? To draw? Okay.
I had so much stuff. Okay. It was it consumed me.
I always remember those because I think every kid goes through that 6-month period where it's they're super into Garfield or something, and they're like, dude, I think I can draw that, and then you realize that takes a lot of talent. After you've gone through 2 of those books, but you just consume it all.
I just sort of went for it. I didn't really have the instructional books. I would just start looking at one of my Ninja Turtles books and start drawing one of the characters, and my mom was like, oh, maybe he's really good at this.
Right.
So I took classes at this place called Kids Art. There's a chain, there's tons around LA.
Okay.
But this one was in Northridge, and I'd go every Saturday morning for an hour, and their courses went from drawing to watercolor to acrylic to oil paint, and I pretty much did that till from same age. I started playing guitar around 5 till about 13.
Oh wow. Yeah. And you loved every second of it?
Yeah. And during the summers they had different summer courses that you go to during the week. So that was my summer camp. Instead of being the baseball summer camp or whatever, I would do a cartooning workshop and a portraiture workshop and sculpture.
Yeah. You do art camp, right?
Yeah, but I would do multiple sessions of them, so they'd run out of activities. Because they had, a course for the week, and I'd take the sculpture one 4 times, and then it was.
You were like, what else is there?
That's all I wanted to do.
We literally don't know. You've already tapped us out. So then, I presume, obviously, once you started to, kind of matriculate to high school, that where did kind of independent music start to infiltrate you as far as being aware of there's stuff that's obviously not on the radio that.
It might have been. It was probably in middle school actually.
Yeah.
Because I was still just listening to K-rock and whatever was on the radio and whatever my brother would feed me.
Uh-huh.
And
Was your brother into any sort of that stuff? Like, was he kind of your gatekeeper as far as like handing stuff down to?
He had a girlfriend that did a little bit.
Oh, okay.
But it was kind of around the same time I was like interested in skateboarding, but never good at it.
Sure.
So I got like a Drive-Thru Records comp.
Okay.
Like a really early one at the skate shop that had like the first RX Bandits record on it, and
Right.
Newfound Glory, Nothing Gold Can Stay.
Absolutely.
And then his girlfriend was also into that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were like 15 or 16 or something.
Right.
And she showed me like bands like Millencolin and stuff, and then I was totally down.
Right. Yeah. You started to dive into that world. Did you start to go to shows like in high school, or was that more like? I mean,
Okay,
shows or concerts.
do we want to define the difference between shows and concerts?
Well, that's true, because I guess a fair question is like, obviously, because I know like AFI is one of your favorite bands of all time, and so like when were you starting to able to go to like those maybe larger scale concerts, but were artists that you kind of discovered?
Probably earlier on. I'm trying to think of like the chronology, because Melissa Etheridge was my first.
Right.
Somewhere in there was Weird Al at the Fonda.
Amazing.
So that was someone I discovered on my own.
Yeah.
And went to see.
Sure.
And my guitar teacher was in a band, and like we went to go see him at the Whiskey a couple times.
Oh, nice.
Kiss I got into through my guitar teacher.
Okay.
But I think like if you're talking more like local
Sure,
shows
sure.
or smaller ones, some of the earlier ones I could remember are probably like I saw that band Rufio at a like a preschool in La Cañada.
Right. Okay.
With my brother.
Sure.
When I was like in 5th or 6th grade.
Okay.
They had a 3-song CDR demo.
Right.
I saw Homegrown and RX Bandits
Okay.
at the Roxy.
Right. I mean, obviously you were able to differentiate between, concerts and shows like we were talking about. Like, but were you immediately drawn to like this is really cool, like the sort of,
Yeah.
like the more intimate vibe, as it were.
It felt cooler. Like it, not that it felt like somewhere I shouldn't be when I was younger, but it was kind of like, wow, this is cool that I'm able to, like my dad's letting me come here on a school night or something.
Right. Yeah, you're like, I can't believe I'm here right now. Obviously, like once you did you start to have the desire to start a band in high school? Like was that always kind of present?
I started my first band in 7th grade.
Okay, and what was the name of it? Because it's probably pretty good.
It was called Tiptoe Charlie's.
Okay, what were you
play
attempting?
it for you.
What were you attempting to sound like?
We were a band from like 7th grade until senior year of high school.
Oh wow, you guys were committed.
Yeah. One lineup change, one drummer change.
Dude, that's really hard in that.
Yeah, I know.
That ecosystem.
I'd say early on we wanted to sound like Millencolin or AFI, or I think there was a ska song thrown in there.
Sure.
And then sort of wanted to be Thrice, Thursday.
Okay, yeah,
Hopes Fall, but not that heavy.
Sure.
Kind of thing.
So you guys change as your musical tastes change. Yeah.
And I'm sure you can imagine at that age, it's kind of
right.
It's always
right.
evolving.
Everything's put. Yeah, you have. I always equate it to where it's like, especially when you're recording like your first demo or something. You always have these like. You have the influences in your head where you're like, oh man, we want to sound like, Snapcase, whatever, like all these bands. And then it comes out just like this very like hodgepodge of everything you're listening to, even though it probably doesn't sound anything like what you would cite your influences to be.
Sure. You probably saw us or were walking out of the Cobalt when Stricken was playing and saw or heard us. I may have met you back then.
Right. And that's the one thing too, where it's like people like yourself and myself who have been involved in this thing for way too long. It's like, we've probably obviously been in the same rooms. We just didn't meet each other at that particular juncture. Yeah. So Cobalt was like your local go-to.
Oh yeah. It was like every weekend.
Right. Just because I was like 15 minutes away from you.
Yeah. It's really close. Easy to set up our own shows. I would just call and book the whole night and get all our friends' bands to play, and it was super fun.
Right. Yeah. You also strike me, and this is something that I'm observing for you now, but kind of, for lack of a better term, like you're the business guy of Touche in the sense of like, Jeremy's obviously, knows a lot of people and networks and stuff like that, but you definitely are the, I guess for lack of a better term, like the bedrock where it's like, you can handle a lot of, just the business stuff. And you seem driven from
the
that
logistics.
And you seem driven from that perspective. Were you always kind of the default businessman of okay.
Yeah. I was always trying to brainstorm some way to keep things going.
Really?
Yeah.
Probably having terrible ideas too. Like, initially, like when you were, or did you?
I'm standing by that. I did a pretty good job in high school.
I love this,
especially for a high school band and witnessing what younger local bands are like now that grew up like purely internet age.
Right.
Like we did things. Well, it's funny because my dad is this very old school logistic whatever guy.
Yeah.
I don't remember the era that the banks sent you back your checks every month. Do you remember this? Because you're a little bit older than me. Apparently that's a thing.
The bank sent your checks back.
Like after you deposited them, they sent them back to you for your records.
Okay.
So my dad was going through and shredding old stuff and found the check for our first pin order. That was from that company 1 Inch Round.
Of course. Yeah, I remember that.
And that $30 basically funded everything we did plus shows for like 5 years. Because that seed money of $10 each.
Right. So that you were basically able to turn that over.
Yeah, but we got crafty. It was like, we were like, okay, if we sell all of these, we'll make $100, and then maybe we could order T-shirts or afford the slimline jewel cases at Office Max so that we can burn our demo.
Right.
There was one point where we didn't have enough money to make booklets, so I figured out how to make an enhanced CD that had like a whole interface when you put the demo in the computer that had live
the
videos
CD-ROM,
and lyrics and all sorts of stuff.
Right.
But it was like, I can do that and we can sell them for $3 instead of $2.
Right.
Because it's got all this extra stuff on it.
Right.
So there's always ideas like that.
That's cool. I mean, I admire that because that was definitely, that was the role I played at every band that I played in too. And like, it was, sometimes it's like a lot of people can look at that sort of whatever craftiness and ingenuity as being like you're just trying to like you're putting a business plan before the band or whatever, but like clearly that was never like the bands that we played in like from our initial stage never had any context of like making money off this thing. It was just a matter of
keeping it going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was the idea of like, oh well, this will lead us to hopefully the next step, as opposed to like, oh, like this is what's going to make us thousands of dollars.
We never thought of it as like this could be our career. I never thought about that until like my band now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It was always like, that doesn't sound realistic to make it in a band, so I'm going to go to art school.
I mean, honestly,
which also seems some semi-unrealistic.
Right.
But
well, no, but I think that's a really important point because I think a lot of I was always of the same mentality where it's like the music that I was making with my friends was like, yeah, these were a way to like collect experiences and do cool stuff, but I was never under the sort of illusions of grandeur of like, oh yeah, like this is going to be the thing, like because it's like that. Yeah, it just seemed like such a far off.
And when you have that mentality, I feel like the fall back down is really hard.
Very hard. Yeah, totally. So then as the band was obviously existing, playing local shows and stuff like that, was it one of those things where it's like you had that burning desire to be like, God, I want to tour, but we just don't have the ability to, or?
I did want to. I think I was a little bit too young for my parents to back that.
Trust that, sure.
And we all, towards the end of high school, we all had,
other ambitions.
Yeah, like we'd all been accepted to schools and stuff, and it was just going to stay a fun pet project.
Right. Did you apply yourself in school? Like, were you a good student? You strike me as a person who would find the right level of grades that you would maintain without bumming your parents out.
My GPA was good. I had like a 3.8 something.
That's really good.
And then I realized as soon as I went to art school, wow, I could have gotten a 2.0 and actually had fun this whole time, and it wouldn't have mattered.
Sure.
Yeah.
Did you, what sort of social group did you fit in as far as like high school is concerned? Were you definitely, one of the, you seem like a type of person that would be able to get along with different people, but not necessarily like being like, oh, I'm super good friends with like, the proverbial jocks or whatever. Like
I didn't hang out with those people much.
Yeah.
I knew from middle school, I knew the group that became the jock cheerleader, popular, like good looking kids.
Right.
But then I wasn't like punk enough to hang out with the actual punk guys that dyed their hair.
Right.
And had like jackets with the Addicts logo painted on the back.
Right.
But then I wasn't like pop punk enough to hang out with the pop punk kids, which by the high school I went to, those kind of were the jock popular kids in a weird way.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
There's definitely a weird balance of power from that perspective. Yeah.
So I knew all those people, but I pretty much just hung out with Dewey, who's still my best friend.
Yep.
And who was my bandmate since 7th grade.
Right.
And our friend Eli, who was like a greaser punk guy that was actually cool.
Yeah, so you guys just basically formed your own pocket and were like, yo, this is it.
It was pretty much just us and then a couple other people that played in like other bands.
Got it. And then I presume, like you were mentioning with the enhanced CD and stuff like that, you probably viewed your sort of design knowledge and expertise as just by like default because the band needed like your help from that perspective, or was it like you're like, I want to take it on myself?
At first it was like, we need some kind of logo or graphic or CD cover or something. And I knew, I'd drawn when I was a kid and knew a little bit of Photoshop.
Sure.
So I was like, okay, I'll
take a stab at it. Yeah. And so was it one of those things you obviously enjoyed that, I guess, experience of being able to create this stuff and create, I mean, I'm going to use the term visual aesthetic, but it's not like your mind was really operating on that level from the earlier bands, but you immediately took a liking to that.
Yeah. It was super fun.
The idea of obviously once you started to apply yourself at art school and stuff like that, did you enjoy the whole art school experience? Because I know a lot of people have mixed feelings when they're spending a lot of money to attend university, when sometimes people like yourself who have obviously had a lot of practical real world experience, especially from the whole DIY punk and hardcore nature, where it's like you've done a lot of that stuff already, and then you go to school and you're like, done all this stuff, or a lot of this stuff already, or did you have that experience at all?
I'd have to really dig to think if my band experiences really did anything for me in college, but I did really enjoy it.
Right.
I thought it was a super worthwhile program, and a lot of people have a misconception of what studying graphic design is.
Right.
I'd say 75% of people I talk to have absolutely no clue what that entailed.
Sure.
But it was a lot of kind of teaching you how to think critically.
Okay.
In a visual sense. And it definitely just shaped my thought process in a lot of ways that inform music making or business decisions and art.
So it was more, you would say that you learned more so from just the whatever editing and creative, the process of it, rather than the actual technical skills.
Yeah, there was almost no technical classes. People think design school is a 4-year Photoshop class. Right. I went into school knowing it, and that wasn't a requirement, but it was sort of okay, here's the problem at hand, and you have this idea, and you want to execute it a certain way. Learn the skills to execute it the way that's the most appropriate.
Right.
If hand drawing this poster is gonna, if that aesthetic is gonna lend itself more to the concept, then hand draw it.
Right.
Learn how to draw.
Right.
Or if it's this crazy digital collage and you don't know Photoshop, figure it out.
Right.
But it was more about the like you said, the process.
That's cool. Yeah. I think it's important that you mention that, because I definitely think a lot of people don't understand that concept, and they're just like, why would I spend $240,000 or how much ever it is to go to Pasadena School of Design or whatever.
Half that, but it could be that now.
Totally. Yeah. It could be in a few years from now.
Yeah.
But a lot of people just they just think of it's well, I can just buy a few Photoshop books or whatever, and I'll be able to
I think some programs are like that.
Yeah.
And some of the private schools that kind of fish more for students, the ones that are really actively recruiting at high schools and stuff.
Right.
I think they tend to be a little bit more on that side.
Sure.
Whereas the ones that you really have to apply to, and it's a really tough selection process, like Art Center or Otis or CalArts, those are more, there's some technical training, but it's definitely a lot about the ideas and how you think. And
Right. No, that's cool.
The methodology.
Right. Yeah. Yes. The methodology. That's a good way of putting it. You had finished obviously art school by the time Touche started to exist, right?
I was in my 3rd year when we started.
Okay. Yeah. Was it one of those things where you, obviously your parents saw that you were practical in the way that you approached all of your band life and stuff like that. So I presume doing all the band stuff that you were doing throughout high school, and even in college, none of that was threatening to them, as far as they were oh, I don't Nick's gonna, make a mistake. Nick's gonna do something stupid.
I think they knew that my end goal was to study art and design and not just,
be a band dude. Right.
Yeah. Not right off college and just try that.
Right.
I don't think they would have been too stoked on that.
Right. Were they ever terrified at the stuff you were bringing home, as far as whoa, what is this weird stuff that Nick's into from the musical perspective? Yeah.
I don't know that much scared them, but I remember early on, my greaser punk friend, he was, he'd be wearing a t-shirt with a skull on it or something, and my mom just thought that means he's a bad kid that does drugs.
Of course,
the character on The Simpsons that's the bully with a skull.
Absolutely,
and she thought very literally about that. So it was funny teaching her, Mom, there's these people that are straight edge and they look like that, but they completely abstain from everything that you're talking about.
Right.
And they still look exactly the same. So you can't really judge, some punk looking kid just saying he's bad. It's just that's his means of self-expression for what he's into.
The book by its cover, Mom. You can't paint with that brush.
But yeah, she she wouldn't want me to have like a shirt with like a skull on it or like something like evil looking, which was obviously a conflict of interest, liking, you know, the Nerve Agents and AFI.
Absolutely.
So I'd have to find the shirts that were like mom okay.
Really? Yeah. Was there any religious upbringing that you had as far as your parents were concerned?
My parents are Jewish, but we never really practiced much. We
got it.
get together for holidays and stuff.
Sure.
I've been to temple once in my life. It was not like that didn't come from a religious place. It was just sort of,
sure. Yeah.
She had this idea in her head.
Right. No, totally. Yeah. Sometimes it's just anytime you hear those misgivings, sometimes they're laced with, you know, religious coloring of like, you know, I've spoken to people on the podcast before where it's like, they've had to sit down with their parents, like with each record they bring home and like lyrically go through it, you know?
Wow.
And it's like, and I mean, those are usually stemming from very like, you know, Catholic or Christian households where it's just like, oh yeah, you got it. We have a screening process.
My parents didn't like the parental advisory stuff.
Yeah.
But then again, one of the first records I really liked was the first Rage Against the Machine record that my brother got. But I remember the end of Killing in the Name coming in and my parents being like, nope, you're not playing this for your kid, brother.
They're like, we're going to stop that right now.
Yeah. But then my dad did end up taking me to see Rage Against the Machine, so he was clearly cool.
And so, like, did he go with you to the show, or did he just drop? Nice.
He took me.
That's awesome. But so you didn't have like a bar mitzvah or anything like that? No, I didn't go through that. No. You know, I mean, obviously, like the history of Touche is well documented, so I'm not gonna belabor any of that. But did you get the job that you have currently kind of like right out of art school, or was it you had kind of floated for a little bit before you landed there?
I started there as an intern when it was the summer after my second year in school.
Oh, okay.
So that was pre-Touche.
Got it.
Yeah.
And so and then that transitioned right into the job that you currently have.
Yeah,
now.
it was at first it was just a summer, and then I think I worked that following winter break, and then I would start doing 1 day a week when that I had free during school. And
got it.
And then it was sort of understood I was going to work there full time when I finished.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you technically only had one job, right? I mean, one real job.
Yeah.
Did you have jobs in high school and stuff like that? As far as
I did. My first job was a teacher's assistant for the kids art place that I went to my whole life, pretty much.
Right. Because they're like, he's hanging around here so much, you might as well give him a job.
They were waiting until I could legally work.
That's amazing.
Because I stopped doing those classes at 13, and you need to be 15 for a worker's permit.
Right.
And the owner would call every summer like, "Are you 15 yet?"
That's amazing.
And then I worked for this like old like health insurance agent.
Oh, okay.
in Encino, like an after school job for a couple of years.
What was your first, for lack of a better term, like freelance art project where it was like, you had a band approach you to like, do something that, whatever it was, whether it was an album cover, t-shirt design, whatever, something from that perspective?
In high school, I did stuff for friends, but I wouldn't really call them like freelance projects.
Yeah.
Like I made a stricken shirt when I was in high school.
Oh, you did? What stricken shirt?
It was like a zombie coming at a person that was kind of like on the floor.
Oh, okay. Nice.
That was high school.
Okay.
I'd say my first like real freelance project was probably the Faceless's first record.
Oh, I didn't know you did that one.
That's me on the cover.
That's hilarious. I had no idea. That's amazing. And that just became because like Michael knew you or something like just...
can't remember how I met Michael, but he recorded my band in high school. He recorded our full length.
Got it.
And then I ended up doing their first record. The Faceless used to play with my band in high school a bit. I think it was like just after high school.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Were you intimidated when you first took on that project, or were you like, no, I'm ready to handle this?
There was a lot of second guessing. I don't know if I'd use the word intimidated, but it was sort of like, is this good enough yet? Is this good enough yet? Right. Yeah.
You would be pressing the edit button a lot in your own head where it's like, I don't think this is ready yet. I don't think this is ready yet.
Yeah. It was like tons of layers in Photoshop and just trying to find the right,
right.
The right mix for it.
And tell me if I'm wrong here, but you seem to me where it's like, you're a very easygoing guy by nature, as far as I would define you as such. But I presume that a lot of your sort of artistic labors are met with so many voices in your head of just internal battles. Am I correct in that? Or is it kind of this I don't know, this process that goes on in your head? Or a better way of saying it, are you super critical of yourself?
I stress myself out, and I make a lot of work that I don't end up showing just as part of the process. And editing that and figuring out what's right for the job and what's right, am I going to be bummed if they pick that And that kind of process kind of stresses me out too. Is this in the right direction? Are they going to respond to any of this? Is this wrong? Is it really right? Sometimes you get a sense of like, that's it.
Right.
But not all the time.
Right. I definitely remember when I first started to pay attention to like artists, especially in the, you know, whatever, the independent music scene, where it's like you first started to see so many layouts by, you know, Jake Bannon and, you know, the Clark brothers up in Seattle. And
they were huge inspirations.
Were they?
Me. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of, you know, regurgitation going on where it was like, not only, and I wouldn't put it the fault of those artists, because there was so much stuff that was being pitched at them. Where it was,
and I'm sure a lot of bands said, I want something that looks just like that. And they were having to fight to make it different.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I distinctly remember this moment where it was like, I don't even know how or why, but it was like, I think I got linked to like a back end on one of it was either the Clark brothers or so, I can't remember if it was them or somebody else. But basically it was like, it had like 7 versions of like layouts, like, but it was kind of like prefab where it's like you could kind of pick which one you wanted, you know? And so it's like you could tell that they have so much work that they're creating layouts in advance. And showing
was
them.
it sort of like a rough idea of like what the typography could be, but like fill in your own song lyrics?
Kind of, yeah. Wow. Like I said, I'm not using that to disparage them or the work that they were doing, but it was just like you could just tell it was like every band wanted to work with them. So it was like they probably just saw the opportunity where it was just like, well, shit, well, let's work ahead or something like that.
That's crazy. I could never do that.
Yeah, I was about to say I presume that would be something that you would never be able to even like wrap your head around, to just like sit down, like, all right, Nick, like do 10 album, like you could, you know, do 2 years worth of work in like 2 months.
No, it's not even, I feel like it's wrong because I put so much effort into like the ideation process and figuring out like what is the right thing for this band or for this record. Right. And, you know, from analyzing the album title and the lyrics and, you know, everything about the layout style and the way things are presented is very specific. I couldn't really, like, I might have had a cool idea that someone didn't go for that I think, oh, this could kind of be appropriate for this other band.
Of course.
But I would never have like stock templates or something like that. That's so wrong to me. I'm sure that like they probably looked good, but totally. That's just so crazy for me to wrap my head around.
Yeah. So what were some of the, you know, especially just like I said, from the sort of like independent music medium that you started to notice, like in taking inspiration from? So like you said, it was the Clark brothers.
Oh yeah. They were like, I'm trying to remember, they had all these crazy, like kind of hyper-real photo collages that, I was always just amazed when they were asterisk.
Yeah.
I would always just obsessively check their website and see what kind of new stuff was going on.
Totally.
Yeah.
Was there anybody else that kind of like, you know, flipped your lid from back then?
I don't think I was aware of much else other than them before going to design school and learning about actual like design history.
Right.
Because that was like music packaging and doing stuff for bands was like why I wanted to do graphic design.
Right.
So that was definitely my gateway into it, but I didn't like know about much else.
Right. Yeah. You weren't actively pursuing that knowledge.
Yeah.
Because how long have you been at Smog Design?
Yeah, it's Smog. Started interning 2007.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And obviously, I mean, you do projects from across the board, from, you know, major label artists to obviously, you know, I mean, more smaller independent things. The one thing that I always find, I'm really thankful that I personally, even though I've got no design skills of my own, I've worked alongside of people that have helped me understand the process much better. So like, I know what to bring to people such as yourself to be like, hey, this is helpful. Right. Yeah. Like I said, I'm thankful that I had that experience, but I know just from my own experience that like 95% of people don't have that, don't have that knowledge. So what's been some of the more difficult things, like not even so much from just like a client by client basis, but just like people that come to you where it's just like, oh, hey, like Nick, can you make this thing look like this thing? Can you make it do this or whatever? What are some of the more challenging adjectives that get thrown in your direction? They're just like, oh, I can't do that. Like, or this, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Make it edgy is a real good one, but that's definitely coming from the major label marketing team.
Of course.
I haven't heard that one in a while, actually.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
It's been a while.
Right.
But that used to be the bane of my existence. Like, what does that mean? Do you want me to make the photo grungy and distressed? Because that doesn't fit for a pop artist.
Make it edgy.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of any others.
Or what are some of the challenges that you find in the creative process? Like when you are working with, you know, these high profile acts where it's like, not only do you have the artist's eyeballs on it, but then you have the label, the management. Like there's like 17 people that are touching it, who are all coming at it from a different visual perspective.
Usually it's the marketing people that are the tough ones.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because they don't feel like they have enough like material to work with or something, or they just...
It's to me, it's one of these things where they're not as involved with, I mean, I'm sure they're involved with a lot of the creative process and different ideas, but I think sometimes there's situations where there's a need for them to want to put their stamp on the project.
All right.
And if they don't have that, not that their job's at stake, but that's
Absolutely.
That's just something of what I read into of they could be like, oh, you know what? I told them to pick comp 7 instead of comp 5. Like, I'm still good, right?
Right. My input is registered and noted in here, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Credited as interfered with process, changed artist's mind. That led to the success of 5,000 more units.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, which is so not true.
It's absolutely not true. Yeah. But there definitely is something people, I think people feel like if they defer on something, that's like saying that they like have no opinion on it, but or it could just mean like, no, you simply like, are like, well, that looks good.
Yeah.
Like, and then why is there anything wrong with that?
Sure.
Touche has started to, you worked so hard to establish the, visual medium that is Touche. And it's like, it's so inherently attached to one another where it's like people can't separate, your art with the band, obviously. Is it one of those things where you are, I guess you're impressed that you've been able to kind of create this large medium just because you have put out a lot of releases, you have put out a lot of things. Is it impressive, I guess, to you that you've been able to kind of create these same but completely different projects for each of these kind of things as they've grown, Yeah,
it's all just really fun. I don't know. I enjoy kind of doing that sort of like more or less like brand direction. I know that sounds cheesy for my own band, but because I'm involved in the music making and knowing what that should look like and how it should kind of carry on what we do.
Right.
Ways to break away from it just enough so that a release is different, but then still tying it back to us. And you sort of, when you kind of look like, or for me, when I look back at our releases, I sort of see patterns and then try to either very logically like break away from one or be like, oh no, that's actually a good consistent theme we should keep carrying.
Right. Yeah. Do you, and because, I mean, in part of that, and then obviously like, with the Deaf Heaven release, just like completely, would you say that's the artwork that single-handedly gets mentioned to you the most as far as just across the board people?
One, because it's recent, and two, because,
it's just so, for lack of a better term, iconic with obviously that release.
It just got everywhere really, really quickly and was mentioned so much.
I presume in certain respects it was surprising for you.
I was definitely surprised at how much it was mentioned. Like I knew it was kind of controversial. Like,
of course.
It being the first paragraph of every press release was something I wasn't expecting.
Right. I know it is weird because it was definitely like, it was like almost the music and the design is exactly as like what your process, like what you try to do, where it's like, you obviously match them together and kind of mesh them into one sort of thing. Yeah.
The one thing, I mean, there's tons of critique of that band and that cover in general, but one thing no one says is that the cover doesn't look
right.
That's the one thing now you haven't heard.
Yeah, totally. And so I'm sure because of that, and obviously your work with Touche, I'm sure you've received kind of a, for lack of a better term, like an influx of people hitting you up to wanting to do design work and stuff like that, because you have a full-time job and you don't need to do like projects on the side, so to speak. Is it one of those things where you just have the absolute luxury of just being like, yes, I'll do that for you. Yes, I'll do that for you. And you just basically pick the projects that you want to work on?
Yeah, it's sort of tough for me because I see everything as a cool opportunity to make something that looks great.
Right.
So I tend to take on more work than I should. I burnt myself out pretty bad last year doing touring full-time, working almost full-time from the road and doing freelance projects.
Right.
But that was just myself not being able to like censor my workload.
Right.
But I'm definitely being more selective now.
What'd you learn from that as far as just did you feel like you were not able to enjoy, like, when you're on the road and you're working, like, did you find yourself just being like, I'm not enjoying anything, or I'm enjoying like parts of this? Like,
no, I still feel like I was able to enjoy quite a bit. There weren't a lot of situations where I had to be like, I'm going to hang back. And, there's so much downtime on tour. There's a lot. Right. There's a lot of, places you can work. I just think the stress level of for example, being at South by Southwest and the promoter needing an ad mat change where one person's head needs to be 60% larger than the others, and I'm grabbing Alex Merchant's Wi-Fi pack and finding a curb in an alley in Austin to make and upload this change. Like that's the stress level that was kind of like, I don't know if I can keep
that's the
doing that
pinnacle of
full time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You're like, this is not worth that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially because it's like you're people don't realize how much graphic people are leaned on so heavily when it comes to like, especially when you're obviously spending a lot of time with your band and you're spending a lot of time, creating the actual music behind it, but then also like all of the small assets that get created for tours and stuff. And you're just like, hey, Nick, can you change this? Hey, Nick, can you change this?
Yeah.
Referencing an earlier question in regards to like, difficult projects and working with people that have no kind of context for how to deliver design critiques or input. I'm sure you have strategies that kind of like are able to subvert that or are able to like be able to get that information out of a person. Like, what sort of things do you do in order to sort of try to coax that sort of information that you need out of them?
Sometimes I wouldn't say my all the time process, but kind of my preferred process if I'm starting a project from the ground up is kind of getting a mood board together.
Okay.
And that would be me just pulling reference. I'm not really doing any design work yet per se. It's more of just like a brainstorming process and like organizing thoughts of like, hey guys, here's, your record and your album title, and this is what I think it sounds like. And here's a reference of like styles of photography I think could be appropriate, and these types of logos, and, this way of treating images or whatever.
Right.
And that'll usually get a response. But that also assumes that the person can look at things visually and like separate, like, I can see how you could make something that looks like all of these things.
Right.
But I haven't had too much problem with someone not being able to see like the full vision.
Sure.
But sometimes I'm in the middle of that process and I get on a roll and think like, oh, I've actually got a really good idea I'm just going to make. And maybe I'll show a combination or something like that.
Mm-hmm. The reason I'm sort of, laboring on your design process is the fact that I think the way that you work is, in my opinion, unique from that perspective. I know artists obviously each have their own way that they work on stuff, but because you work on, especially from like a freelance perspective, you work on, like I said, only the projects that you really like can feel. To explain it better, you remind me of like a producer. Where it's like you're the sort of person where it's like you would like if the band is recording their record and they already know that they want you to work on the record, like you would be the type of guy that would be there at the studio. Like,
yeah, absolutely. I would love that.
Right. And I think,
and in the major label world, I'm often not able to even hear music when we're working on the artwork.
Right.
Because the deadlines are so tight.
Right.
And there's a little bit of secrecy about it.
Right. Of course. Yeah. They're like, we can't let you lowly minions listen to this new.
Yeah.
Right. Do you notice that like I guess your process, for lack of a better term, like is kind of is very invested? Like it's unique in a way.
I think that's the way it should be.
Okay.
I really do. I think you need to immerse yourself in what you're becoming a part of and what you're building.
Right.
I think it's super important, but some people don't want to do that. Some people aren't able to. There's it's all over the board. That's my ideal situation.
Right.
But then most of the time someone says, hey, like we have this photo shoot, like, can you make some album covers?
Right.
It's like, I can. I wish you would hit me up 3 months ago and we could have really done this thing right.
Right.
But
we could have done this thing in my ideal sense of the term.
Yeah.
Something else that I would be remiss if I didn't mention, like, because I think the last time that we hung out, or I gave you a compliment in regards to the way that you dress. You were a very stylish gentleman, as far as
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think it's have you always kind of been that way in regards to, or is that something that's just been kind of that's something that you've more focused on the past, since college or the past couple of years?
It's a little more adult life.
Okay.
I look back at things I wore in college and was like, wow.
Well, what'd you look like in college?
For the most part, I had super long hair.
Okay.
At one point, I had a 6-inch beard.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe that's why you don't remember meeting me.
Actually, that's probably true. Like, you know, one of those things where it's like, oh, that's Nick. That's what. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I just didn't know how clothes fit or how they should
yeah.
go together.
You
or
definitely,
something.
you definitely don't recognize that until you become an adult and you realize, like, like, oh, I don't need to wear extra large T-shirts like all the time.
It's just, getting older, figuring things out.
Totally. But because I think, I mean, the reason that I mention it in regards to this interview and then just you as a person and the way that you present yourself to the world, because obviously, like, that's not important in like the punk and hardcore scene, like as far as like visually presenting yourself. To a certain,
it is though. Well, but it's just not. It's not like looking a certain way or looking good is important because you're following trends based on your friends and your social group and the kind of. You worry about like what T-shirt you're going to wear to a specific kind of show.
Absolutely.
I can't wear a Sea Haven shirt because they played here last night and other people are going to be wearing that shirt. So I'm going to dig into finding my more credible shirt that isn't going to cross over with someone else at the show.
Absolutely.
There's definitely a process of that.
There definitely is a process. Yeah. I guess there's an intention, but
it may not be fashionably informed. It's more by the group you're going to hang with,
right? Yeah. So, and I think that's why I respect what you do from that perspective, because it's like what you are presenting up there, it like can be influencing for people who look at that and are just like, oh, I don't typically identify with the sort of, whatever, black jeans, black T-shirt, like, even though 99% of the kids that attend shows like will identify with that. Yeah. The choices that you make of just like, oh, who, like, that's Nick, like, he looks kind of weird, like, there's that
place.
Right. There's that immediate sort of like, lack of a better term, like disconnect. Have people recognize that in you? Like, if people mention it to it, like, oh, dude, you look sharp, you look spiffy, or like, is that a conversation that goes on?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's the scrutiny.
Okay.
But I've sort of like developed this funny like rule of threes in my head, which I think is applicable.
Okay.
So I remember, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago or something, I saw a leather jacket I really liked.
Yep.
Leather jacket's always been something kind of difficult to pull off. Like, I'll try one on and be like, like I look like I'm trying to look too punk. Sure. Or if it's like a zip down the middle, like I just look like a dad instantly. So finding the right balance was tough. Right. And when I got it, I'm immediately just thinking, what is all the shit that my band is going to give me as soon as I walk into the practice space? Because it looks like you're like, oh, leather jacket guy. Like there's honest, like doing anything that's out of your norm, someone's going to comment on.
Absolutely.
Like if you grabbed one of my floral button-ups right now and then went wherever you're going after this, I'm sure someone would make a comment.
Yeah, be like, oh, what do you got going on there? Right.
But here's where the rule of threes come in.
Okay.
Is you do that the second time, someone else is going to comment. You do it the third time, someone's like, oh, that's just Ray. He wears floral button-ups from Nick's closet. So the rule of threes also applies to three things outside of your norm.
Okay.
If I start wearing dress shoes, let's say,
right.
You're like, nice shoes, nice shoe guy, blah, blah, blah. Third time, doesn't happen.
Right.
Then you go to, I guess what I'd call my most recent endeavor, which is the pocket square.
Okay, yeah.
And people are going to comment on it.
Yep.
But then after the third thing you do, so I guess that's technically like 9, then it's just like, oh, that's Nick. He just does stuff that we don't really know or identify about, but I'm not even going to, it's not even worth commenting on because that's just a thing he does.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like most of the, it was never a concern, obviously, about how the audience would perceive you. It's just like, I got to go through this initial stuff of like all my friends making all these comments, and then
it wasn't like, I think that analysis happened afterwards.
Sure,
but it wasn't like a concern of mine. It was just like the first time being like, I just want people to comment. Right. I just want to like exist the way I want to exist. And I wasn't like trying to like elicit a response or be like, I'm going to break out of my shell and start wearing all this weird stuff. It was just things I liked.
Right. So something you were like, I think I can do this now.
Yeah. But that was like my way of getting through it, was like, all right, it's going to end soon. Right. If I just keep doing it and don't retreat.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think something about that too, there breeds for lack of a better term, like, an air of confidence in a way where it's like, I mean, you strike me as a person who, I wouldn't say has an ego, but you seem generally confident in yourself or
more or less.
Okay. Yeah. Do you think there's any insecurities in what it is that you're doing besides like the internal conversations you have as far as the art is concerned?
Wait, are we on the art sense or the dressing sense?
Or just in general, just in your own, existence, for lack of a better term?
I guess I would say I'm relatively confident.
Yeah.
I get in my head a bit, like everybody does. I overanalyze things a lot. I get anxious, but for the most part, I exist pretty mellow.
Right.
Yeah.
because before you telling me that you had a brother, like you, I think I identify with you. I mean, I'm an only child. Mm-hmm. And so like you strike me, and I think there's something I've always been pegged with where it's like only children like have this sort of like, you know, this sense of self where it's like, because I haven't had anybody to like, you know, bounce stuff off of because I'm an only child. But you strike me as a person that I guess navigated through your life, you know, with influences, but, you know, generally speaking, where it's like, well, this is kind of a path that I'm going to go on, you know, and like, regardless of like what other people are kind of saying, like, I'm going to kind of do it to a certain extent.
Sure.
Would you say that's a fair classification?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess I'd say that. I didn't have the older brother that was showing me everything as time went on, and being my older brother, we just had totally different lives. Right.
Yeah. And you said only recently you guys kind of came around to be like, oh, like, hey, we're cool with one another. When I was in
high school, we started becoming cool because we had a little bit closer interests.
Right. Yeah. Now that obviously, you know, Touche is a quantifiable commodity. You know, you guys are out there, and you, for all definition of the term, you're successful. What are your parents? Do you think your parents are more proud of the band life that you've created or the art life that you've created?
I don't know if I could separate it.
Sure.
They're proud, for sure. They like coming to the shows, and they also like getting copies of like records I've designed. Right. Parents just like bragging.
They do.
General.
Right.
Yeah. They like having something to tell like the lady at the nail shop about.
Right. Oh, my son just went on tour.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff.
They like that stuff.
Touring life also, like that still appeals to you to a certain extent, or that, because I mean, it is, like you said, there's a lot of downtime. There's a lot of, for lack of a better term, like it can get cumbersome after a while, obviously. And I mean, that's, you know, why you guys are obviously taking a break from the road.
Yeah.
Do you feel that affects like your creativity at all in certain respects, as far as like being kind of, because I mean, tour is just a whole different, like you're not connected to the real world at all.
Wait, sorry. Does being on tour affect my creativity?
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I'm obviously able to get a bit more done easier here, but I think the time constraint on the road of I need to get this done in the next half hour before the gas break or you know, before sound check or whatever. I think that makes me make decisions quicker and just be like, this is good enough, I'm going to send it, rather than really overthinking it for working on it for 4 or 5 hours. Right. Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, you do have the constraints of those schedule breaks to where it's just like, I can't. I haven't done anything yet that I think suffered from it. But I think if I had kept going, like if we had another 6 months of touring, I would have exploded.
Right. Like, this isn't it. This is, and so kind of looking forward, what are one or two bands that you would be like, I would just love to do something for them? You know, I mean, like in a sort of dreamscape sense of like, what would be something that you would love to wrap your head around from that perspective?
I've been asked this before, and they still stand because I haven't worked for them yet.
That's fine.
Chelsea Wolfe and Kylie Minogue.
Okay. I mean, I can understand Chelsea Wolfe. Kylie Minogue, why?
Massive fan.
Okay.
Yeah. I love pop music, but I love Kylie, and she's always had a really sophisticated aesthetic, especially in that whole world.
Absolutely.
Her packaging is fantastic, and her records are always really good.
Right.
So that'd be a fun one.
Because you obviously make no bones about the fact that you like pop music. Are people, I mean, obviously it's less of a faux pas these days to like that sort of, you know.
It totally was when I was getting into it, though.
Right. No, I know.
I would get so much shit for wearing a Lady Gaga shirt when we played shows.
I mean, you're saying in the early Touche days? Like,
yeah. People would give me shit all the time. And now that's like a cool thing to do, is wear a Taylor Swift shirt while you're playing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's because you can, because that's just become more, I guess, culturally accepted, especially in independent music, where it's like, oh yeah, you can like these things.
You didn't used to be able to.
No. Yeah. Tell me about that. Like, I mean, because I do think that's an important point, and we can obviously end on this one, where the stones that can be thrown from that perspective, from like, oh, you can't like this style of music because of, you know, lacks artistic credibility or whatever.
Well, usually you get thrown the homophobic slurs of liking pop music and being in a punk or hardcore band. Right. Yeah, there's that whole side of it, that side of insecurity of like, I can be comfortable with myself, and I'm using my first foray into it, which was Justin Timberlake. Right. Like, I was the guy with the long hair and the 6-inch beard dancing my ass off, like, you know, 10 people back from the front of the stage. Right. Future Sex Love Sounds tour.
Right.
That was when I realized I liked pop music, and that I wasn't didn't have to be ashamed of liking something that was mainstream or on the radio or dancey or poppy or whatever.
Right. You didn't have to feel that that, for lack of a better term, like the punk rock guilt of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't like this because it doesn't.
I have
fit
to hide
mold.
this. It's the guilty pleasure thing,
right.
which I've always stood by, that I don't have guilty pleasures that I can really openly talk about.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I think that's such a lame descriptor.
Yeah. Totally.
I mean, I think because I think you can say that when you're 14 years old. Well, my guilty pleasure is this, like, because you're for lack of a better term, you have no identity at that time.
And you're so much more concerned with what people think about you.
Absolutely. Yeah. But then, like, when you become a grown ass person, like, you don't need that. Who's going to judge you?
Yeah. And even if they are, it's like, fuck off, man. This is my taste.
I mean, the only judgment that I could see being placed upon a person's music they listen to is like, oh, you're listening to, white power hate music. Then you'd be like, that's a judgment call. Like,
yeah. And I'm really into the message.
That'd be something I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, thank you, Nick. This has
Absolutely.
been quite a fun jaunt. Normally these are a little more structured, but this felt great.
Cool.
There was Nick. There was his life. There is his inspiration for being a creative individual. Just a nice guy, right? He's one of those people where you meet him and you're just like, I get you, man. Like, you're a good guy. Like, you're doing good things. You're contributing. You're making the world a better place. And that's the bare minimum that any of us can do on this planet, is make it better for the people that are living after us. So anyways, the producer, as always, is Tom Richfield, just continually killing it week by week, making sure that these shows sound as good as they do. He even bought me a microphone for, I think, Christmas? Yeah, we'll call it Christmas. And that's just, it's sweet. It makes my heart swell, and I love him so much. And visit the show, 100wordspodcast.com, and I'm just eternally grateful. Just pouring love and appreciation to you, the listener, pouring it all over you. So anyways, until next week, please be safe, everybody.